Welcome to New Rechts, or for our English listeners, New Right. My name is Daniel de Liever, and today we're going to talk about education. And I'm happy today to talk to Catherine Burbelsing. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And for those that don't know you, you're the mistress and founder of Michaela School, and this is the context of what we're going to talk about today. But before we actually dive into this, maybe you can tell a little bit about your background for our listeners.
Yes, well, I've been a teacher all my life in inner London. So, inner city London, where you've got a variety of kids from different ethnic
Mm-hmm.
backgrounds. I grew up in Canada. I came here at the age of 15. I then went to university and so on here and became a
Mm-hmm.
teacher. And I've always been slightly disappointed by schools generally about what they could achieve. So in 2010, I gave this speech
Mm-hmm.
at the Conservative Party conference, which, well, I just thought it was a little speech, but actually it changed my whole life. I ended up having to leave my school because I'd criticized the education system at a Conservative Party conference. I have to say, I'm not a member of the Conservative Party.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, I then was out of a job and I had to find an alternative thing to do. I then thought I would set up my own school. At that time,
Mm-hmm.
free schools had been introduced in England. These were the free schools are based off of charter schools in America, which meant that
Mm-hmm.
individuals and groups could set up schools and get state money to help them run the school. So it's not a private school, it's entirely a state school. It's just
Mm-hmm.
set up by a group of people, our school, which is
Mm-hmm.
called Michaela. And so it took us 3.5 years to open because we had a lot of people trying to stop us. Often the unions were trying to stop us from opening. And then we opened in 2014 eventually with 120 children. We now
Mm-hmm.
have just over 700 children, and we're full.
Great.
Yes, and we have children from year 7 all the way to year 13, and we've had our children go off to university. And we also get the best progress in the
Mm-hmm.
country. We've done that for 3 years running, so we've done very well. And we get a lot of visitors to the school, 800 visitors, more than 800 visitors every year, mainly teachers from across the world who come to see what we do.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. I'm quite curious. There are a few things you said that I want to ask you about. First of all, you said you're giving a speech about what's wrong to say in education or things that could go better.
Yeah.
What was your criticism at the time of what education in UK could do better?
Yeah, well, I suppose the criticisms probably have not changed. uh, I was saying that what I said that the left had done a lot of good for education,
Mhm,
but that we've gone too far, um,
mhm,
and that we need to pull that back somewhat, and that there's too much excuse making for children. Um,
mhm,
I talked about anger management, for instance, at the time, saying that a child, when he's naughty and he reacts
mhm,
badly, we then say, well, he's struggling with anger management. What we need to do is send him to lessons on how to deal with
mhm,
anger, as opposed
mhm,
to having very simple rules where they get praised when they do the right thing and they get punished when they do the
mhm,
wrong thing. Um,
mhm,
you know, there's no one in our school at Michaela who suffers from anger management. Um, and because we have systems and the children rise to those high standards that we have for them,
mhm,
because they know they'll get into trouble if they do the wrong thing. So
mhm,
uh, that was the sort of thing I was fighting then. I think we still have the same problems in the system, and that there is far too, I think actually the excuse making has got a lot worse, frankly, since 2010. And that does not,
I can imagine that.
yeah, definitely. And it does not help children from more deprived backgrounds. In fact, it
Mhm,
gives the children from more deprived backgrounds more excuses to not achieve, which means they don't
mhm,
achieve. And then in the end, what do? You end up with a bunch of children who can't read and who can't write and who can't or are not numerate. This is not helpful to anybody.
That makes sense. But then, of course, the question would be if there's so many problems, why did, for example, the unions actually try to stop you from opening this school?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's still the case. Frankly, our new education secretary, Bridget Phillipson, is pushing
Mhm.
through a bill through Parliament right now to
Mhm.
change the things that have made the schools successful. So she wants to return us. Sorry, those are our pips. The kids will change lessons.
No problem.
Yeah, she wants to return us to the days before schools
Mhm.
had the freedoms that we currently have to make things better. So, good
Mhm.
question. Why would anyone want to make it so that kids don't do as well as they do?
Mhm.
I would say that on the left, there is a very powerful desire to make things equal at outcome. So they call this equity.
Mhm.
And they're not thinking we want to give everybody an opportunity that is equal. They want it to be equal at the end. And they want
Mhm.
equity to exist. And if it means reducing the standards for some to make sure that
Mhm.
everybody has the same standards, that is what
Mhm.
they'll do. So I think very much this sort of leftist mentality um, has people, has politicians like her, motivates her in that way. I call her a Marxist. And what do I mean by her being a Marxist? Partly because she wants equity and she cares about equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity.
Mhm.
She's also happy to pull down the standards of some to make sure that everybody
Mhm.
has the same standards. And she will do this through centralizing powers in the state. So rather than there's autonomy that exists at the moment with
Mhm.
individual schools, we call them academies, and the academies in Britain are able to, well, I say in Britain, in England, I should say, um,
Mhm.
they are able, a school leader like myself is able to make decisions that are right for their population. And different populations
Mhm.
are different. And it
Of
was
course.
recognized by the previous conservative government that
Mhm.
they don't know better than we do. The bureaucrats in Whitehall don't know better than us school leaders. So they gave us freedoms to be able to make the right sorts of decisions for our
Mhm.
kids. That has completely transformed the performance of children in England. So England has risen through the international league tables. In PISA, for example, we used to be 27th
Mhm.
in science or 29th in science, I think. We've now moved to
Mhm.
19th, or we've moved up a lot. We used to be
That's good.
7th in maths. We then have moved to 7th in maths. Um, we've now been established as the top reading country in the Western world. And these are all through Pearls and PISA. You see this in the international league tables. And so, how has that happened? Well, it's happened thanks to the freedoms that have been given to the school leaders to make the right
Mhm.
decisions for their populations. But if you have a leftist government in power, now, if you're in
Mhm.
the middle of the road and just left leaning, it's okay. But our education secretary is very much very far to the left. So she wants
Mhm.
to control everything. And because she wants to control it all, she'll take away those freedoms. And then we're going to return ourselves to 2009, where in the international league tables, we really were not performing very well at all.
So basically, it's undoing a lot of the progress that's been made under the last government since 2010 till now.
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of a shame. How do you feel that other school leaders are reacting to this? Or do you feel a lot of support in your criticism that you just laid out, or do you feel that you're kind of a little bit alone in the field of education?
There are loads of school leaders who are in agreement with me. Some who have spoken out publicly. Many
Mhm.
don't feel they can speak out publicly. Um, and one might say it's because their schools are so unionized that they cannot speak out publicly. I don't know.
Mhm.
I know they're too frightened to speak out. I know they'll say it to me privately, but they won't say it publicly.
Mhm.
I suppose they also think there's no point. So a lot of people are just resigned, and they kind of think, well, she's the education secretary. She's going to push this bill through because Labour have a massive majority.
Mhm.
So it's impossible
Yes.
to sort of win against that. Uh,
Mhm.
and it's really very sad because all of the huge gains that have been made over the last decade and a half are going to disappear.
That's even more alarming than I personally even realized. You don't hear very much about this, at least in the Netherlands, for sure. We are, I would say, very Anglo-American focused, but even here, you don't hear anything about this.
Well, you don't even hear about it in the English news. Nobody knows. I'm trying to bring attention to this, but nobody actually
Mhm.
has any idea what's going on. And I mean, to be honest, do I know the details of various bills going through Parliament that aren't about
Mhm.
education? No. So if you're not in education, you
Mhm.
don't really know. And even then, if
Mhm.
you're an ordinary teacher, you don't know about the details of a bill in Parliament. And if there's a massive majority for the
Mhm.
Labour, well, they'll just be able to push through whatever they want. So, and unfortunately, we've got an education secretary who really is much of a Marxist. I'm not, I don't think this is the case for all
Mhm.
Labour MPs. I think we could
Mhm.
have got a Labour MP who wasn't such a Marxist and we wouldn't be in this situation. And what's
Mhm.
terrible is that we are at the mercy of one woman,
Mhm.
right? Um, and this is how democracies work. And if the press
Yes.
do their job of holding politicians to account, um,
Mhm.
they get away with this stuff. But it's fascinating you being in the Netherlands because you know that there are some schools in the Netherlands that have copied us. Do you know this?
Actually, I did not, to be honest.
There are. There are what's called, you need to look them up, Michaela concept schools. And
Interesting.
yeah, and there are a few, there's an organization, um, what are they called now? Oh, it'll come to me, the name of their organization.
You
Um,
can say it later. That's okay.
what's that?
You can say it later when it pops up into your mind. That's
Yeah,
at least for me. That's how it works. When you're not thinking about it, then it randomly pops up
yeah,
in your mind.
exactly. I need to just look here. Academia.
Ah, yeah.
Now, Academia, they are in Amsterdam, and they have essentially got a bunch of schools doing Michaela concept schools in the Netherlands, where they are copying some of the stuff that we do, because they were very excited when they came to join us. The academia is, one of these sorts of think tanks that you will have.
Hmm.
We don't have a similar sort of thing here, but where they send people to schools to help them get better.
Hmm.
And one, they've been trying to help your schools that are perhaps have more of an immigrant population,
Hmm.
have lots of poor kids, trying to help
Hmm.
them to get better with a Michaela
Hmm.
style education.
Hmm. That's great. Of course, we're going to talk also about what's actually the philosophy. But I have one last question. I'm curious what you think about it. But I don't see this articulated very often. But people say education is important. The children are the next generation. You always hear these buzzwords and these one-liners. But at least in the Netherlands, but also from me following UK politics, and I guess broader in the West, it seems like people are saying this, but they're not really believing in it. And maybe you can articulate, as someone who actually deals with this on a daily basis, how important it is that now education potentially under this new Labour government is going to decline. And in general, we see, of course, this focus, this leftist focus in Western schools, which I guess in many countries are now focused on equality of outcome instead of equality of opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, and so I do think it's important to say that not all people on the left think like that. It's the more
Of
the
course.
leftists who think this idea of
Hmm.
equity. But you're right that culturally,
Hmm.
we're all Marxists. We've all been swimming in the waters of thinking equity is what we should be aiming for, as opposed to equality
Mhm.
of opportunity.
Mhm.
And I think it's about we forget that what it is to be human. Humans are
Mhm.
motivated by finding meaning and purpose in their lives, by having struggle and hard work and overcoming
Mhm.
obstacles. The idea of just letting somebody sit around, not really doing very much, and then when they get to 18, placing them in a job, that is not a life that's worth living. It's not,
Mhm.
you're not living a life of dignity when you do that. And I think there's far too much condescension that comes from the more middle classes, and they look to the
Mhm.
working classes and they think, poor little you. What we're going to do is we're going to sort it out for you. We'll give you a job when you're a little bit older. And I'm saying, no, 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 no. They need to learn how to read, write, be numerate, and so on. Because yes, they might have more obstacles in front of them as opposed to
Mhm.
a rich kid who goes to a private school. But jumping over those obstacles, taking ownership of your life, using your agency to make good choices and trying to avoid the bad choices, that is what
Mhm.
makes life worth living. And I think that too often, um, the leftist tendency is to want to
Mhm.
central planning and to stand
Mhm.
up at the top as the politicians and go, I'm going to move around these chess pieces and make everybody happy by making sure everybody's in we've got the equal number of black and white people as lawyers, equal number of black and white people as dentists and doctors and so on. And we're
Mhm.
going to move around the chess pieces so that everything is exactly as we want it. As opposed to, you know what, a more conservative minded person like myself, I accept that there will be inequalities. I get that. Um, I just want to make it so that everybody has as much equality of opportunity as we can get it.
Mhm.
The thing is, even within the same family, two brothers will not be equal, right? One will be taller
For
than
sure.
the other, one will be faster than the other, one will be smarter than the other, and so on. But the key thing is that those two brothers are able to get a good education to make something of their lives. And we are spending too much time thinking about the outcomes as opposed to
Mhm.
what are our schools like? School is the number one thing, school and family. Those are the two things that are going to allow a child to be successful. Now,
Mhm.
I can't fix their families for them. I can't do that. But I can fix their education for them. And that's something the state can do. So the state should be investing so much in their
Mhm.
schools. And when I say so much, I don't just mean financially. I mean interest. I find that nobody is interested in what makes for a good school. And either we have politicians who want to stop good schools from being good, as we currently do with Bridget Phillipson, or we have ordinary people who, once they've been to
Mhm.
school, we in the West don't realize how important it is for us to have good schools. Like they get it in China. They get that a child's achievement isn't just because he was
Mhm.
born bright. It's because he's been taught well and he's been immersed in an environment that allows him to become a better version of himself. The
Mhm.
West tend to just think if he does well at math, well, he's good at math. If he does well at English, he was born good at English. And they don't seem to get that obviously what the parents do and what the teachers do have huge impact on what the child will become.
For sure. And it's kind of sad because we used to have this ethos in the West of actually of a meritocracy where people are motivated to work hard and get the right environment. I'm not going to say this was perfect, of course not, but it was at least a good aim, so to speak.
Mm.
I'm also curious. One last thing before we go to the what you actually do as a Michaela school. I saw also you have this reputation of being the strictest headmistress of the UK. Can you tell me a little bit about this nickname of how you view it?
Yeah, well, a journalist once called me that. I mean, look, the school is very strict. Children would not turn around in the class and chat to each other. Children are always on task. They're always working hard. We give lots of homework every night and they complete it. They're very good, our kids, but they're only good because we make them good. I
Mhm.
being strict is to love children enough to keep your standards high for them. I think most people don't want to be strict because it makes them feel uncomfortable. You're not. It's not because you like children. It's because you like yourself. You
Mhm.
would rather feel good in that moment. Um, Whereas
Mhm.
when you realize that actually the best thing you can do for children is to hold your standards really high for them, well, then it becomes easy to be strict. So I'm considered the strictest headmistress. Yeah, people sometimes think that must mean you hate children. No, you've just misunderstood what strict is. Strict is loving children, and we
Mhm.
love them more than you do. So that's where I get it from, and that, of
Mhm.
course, one of the reasons why our children do so well.
That's great. I'm. How does this play into? Let's talk about a little bit the broader philosophy first of what Michaela School does. How would you describe your philosophy when you started it, and how it has, I guess, found its way now over the last few years in your school?
Yeah. So, well, we have very strict behavior. So we have strict systems. There are detentions after school. We also praise them. There's praise and punishment, both of them. And we're very
Mhm.
consistent in how we apply it. The second thing is that we believe in adult authority. So we, uh, teacher stands at the front, leads the learning in the way that they did in 1955. Nowadays, in the Netherlands, I've been to some of the schools in the Netherlands.
Mhm.
The desks are in groups. The children are
Yes.
leading the learning. It's not the teachers who are leading the learning. The teachers are not really in charge in the way that they should be and in the way they used to be. And not just in the Netherlands, here in England, everywhere. This is the case in the
Of course.
um, and I think teachers should be in charge, just like I think parents should be in charge. Uh, because otherwise, children make the wrong choices because they're kids and we need to look after them and we have a duty to do what's right by them. Um,
Mhm.
and doing what's right by them means um, holding their hands when they cross the street. You don't just say to a toddler, off you go, you figure out how to cross the street.
Mhm.
We look after them. And over years, we teach them how to cross the street. That's the same for algebra. That's the same for learning how to hold your knife and fork. It's the same for everything. So unfortunately, we don't do that anymore. We just assume kids can look. We even do baby led weaning. I don't know if you know what that is.
No, I don't.
So when you mash up their food, and it used to be the case,
Mhm.
you mash up different types of food and you give different types of food to your toddler. Nowadays,
Yes.
they put the food in front of the child and the child decides what they're going to eat. I mean, we've lost our minds. We really lost our minds in the West. I don't know what's wrong with us. It's so obvious that we should be leading, but instead we've got
Yes.
children leading. You know,
I can tell you someone who actually has a toddler as well. This is definitely not something that I ever would have in my mind or my wife to, to do this with our toddler. But it's, I guess, interesting to know how some other people are doing this. I'm also curious, how are children actually responding to this different kind of way that you're working with them?
well, the kids, of course, do very, very well. And all of these teachers from around the world come and see us. And
Mhm.
we have people from Australia, we have people from all over. There was some people from Germany yesterday. Before that, Australia. I mean, every day they're from all over, and they are always blown away by what they see, and they take ideas that we have, and they take them back to their schools and make their schools better,
Mhm.
which is great.
For sure. And how do parents react to this? I assume that parents are also brought up in now in this day and age. Is it hard for them to adjust to this kind of different style that their children are getting taught at?
Yes, I do think not so much how they're being taught. The parents don't really know that, um, but
Mhm.
they do get a bit shocked at the detentions. But now they just got used to it. So I always say
Mhm.
to the families when they're joining, don't be surprised when your child gets a detention. Everybody gets detentions at Michaela. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. And then they get used to it, and it's fine.
And you talk about detention. How you say everyone gets it? How does this practically work? I guess the school that I also used to go to, this was not really a thing anymore. So I'm curious if you can just describe this. I can imagine more people that are watching this would maybe not know from practice anymore how you implement this.
That is worrying in itself.
Yeah, true, but that's why it's good to talk about, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. Well, look, it's very simple. You go to a room, you sit down, you do some work for half an hour, and then you go home. That's all.
Mhm.
That's what a detention is. It means you don't go
Mhm.
home at the end of the day. You just go to a room and you sit
Mhm.
down and you do some work, and then you leave half an hour
Mhm.
later. That's all.
Mhm. That's okay. Fair enough. That's not that too complicated. Are you now seeing also within the UK itself, because you talk about a lot of people, they come from all over the world and they are maybe implementing some of the things that you're doing that in some ways used to be the norm quite some decades ago. Are you seeing in the UK also, are you collaborating with other schools in any way to make this happen on a broader scale, or not yet?
Yeah, so there are some schools that had direct contact with us, head teachers who I will help out.
Hmm.
Sometimes I go to schools and I give talks. I'm specifically working with a school in the Bronx, in New York, actually, bringing some of our ideas to there to make them into more of a Michaela school. And then, as I said, there are schools in the
Hmm.
Netherlands. I actually had two of my teachers who were lived in they've come back to England now, but they were in the Netherlands for 2 years working for academia, and they were going to visit schools in the Netherlands to get them to be more like Michaela.
Hmm.
So there are schools right in your country there that are copying Michaela, which is very exciting.
For sure, I definitely will reach out to them. I think it's maybe it's a shock that I've never heard of them, and I'm quite sure that most Dutch people have never heard of them. But let's change that, I would say.
Yes, well, the guy in
Um,
charge is Pim Pollen, Pim,
okay,
and then his last name Pollen, Pim Pollen.
all right, that's good to know. Additionally, you said in the beginning there was a lot of resistance in your school. Now you're kind of established. I think also you got the results to back it up. You got some authority also with how other schools look at you. Are you still having almost existential problems of your school, besides the not just from the political field which we talked about, but from the educational field itself?
Yeah, so lots of people did try and stop us from opening, and people would protest outside. And I mean, we've had trouble we still have trouble. We don't have people protesting outside, but people will do FOIs. So FOIs are they write in asking for information. It takes up a lot of our time.
Hmm.
Um, they they do try. They sometimes on Twitter, people will
Hmm.
gang up and they will, a mob will attack me for some reason, something
Hmm.
I said. But but it is hard for them to argue against us when you've got kids in the inner city doing very well.
Yes.
So it's become a lot harder for them to attack us, but there are still some crazy people out there.
It's kind of weird because, like you were saying yourself, in a sense, you are, let's say, the classically left, the old left kind of dream of giving opportunities to people who had less opportunities. Maybe if you would not exist as a school,
Right.
you would say for, let's say, the old social democrats, this would be actually a marvelous example of how it should be, right?
Yeah, and in fact, the Social Democrats here, when I think about my
Hmm.
own views, they tend to match up quite a lot with what the Social Democrats
Hmm.
think. Yeah, um, we're not, my what we think about the economy. I mean, I'm not an
Hmm.
economist. I have no idea. The conservatives, some of what the conservatives think, I would agree with, and much of what the Social Democrats think is what I would agree with. You're right. It
Hmm.
used to be a goal of the left to give poor kids a chance. I
Hmm.
just that has changed over my lifetime.
Hmm.
Mm.
Are you hopeful? I guess as a last topic, that we are gonna change things around in the West when it comes to our view on education.
It's a good question. I'm always very dismayed by the lack of interest in education. That's always been the case.
Hmm.
I mean, not just in my lifetime. I think about, I don't know, Margaret Thatcher, for instance. She was what,
Hmm.
education secretary. Nobody remembers when she was education secretary because nobody cares about no, like education.
Yeah, fair point.
What's that?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Even I didn't would not think of her
No,
in this way, I
no,
guess.
nobody cares about education secretary. That position is not one
Hmm.
that our politicians seek after. They want to be foreign
Hmm.
secretary. They want to be, um, any number of different positions, anything
Hmm.
apart from education secretary. They just education nobody thinks is important, because in the West we think you just send your child to the local school, they'll turn out how they turn out. If your child is bright, they do well. If your child isn't so bright, they don't do so well. They don't realize, one, that the child will be a completely different child depending on which school you send them to,
For sure.
different adult. But not only that, but it's through school that you shape the culture of a country. No one seems to understand this point. No one, on the left or the right. And I keep saying it, but nobody's listening to me.
Let's change that, I guess. I think that's it's very good, and I'm glad that you agreed to talk to me today. I'm also curious if people want to support you or follow you, and of course, Michaela Schools. What could they do for you and for Michaela School?
Well, I'm on X, I suppose they call it. I still call it Twitter. And my handle is Miss Snuffy, MISS _ Snuffy, SNUFFY. The Snuffy comes from Snuffleupagus. So Mr. Snuffleupagus was on an American television program called Sesame Street, and Big Bird. You may have heard of Big Bird, the big yellow bird.
Yes. Yes, I do.
He had a friend called Snuffleupagus. Snuffleupagus was this huge mammoth. And Big Bird was the only person who could see him. Nobody else on the street, on Sesame Street, could see him because he was the elephant in the room. So when I first wrote a blog in 2005, I called it To Miss with Love, and my name was Miss Snuffleupagus. People would call me Miss Snuffy for short. And that was because I was the elephant in the room. And then when I started my Twitter, I called myself Miss Snuffy, and that's why I'm still called Miss Snuffy to this day.
That's great. I think I've never heard anybody put so much effort into a Twitter name. I surely didn't, I can tell you.
Yes. Well, I didn't. It wasn't my Twitter. The Twitter name just came from
Yes.
the blog name.
Yes.
So
Fair enough.
that's why.
Okay, and that's for you personally. And how about the schools? Any way that people can donate, or any other way that they can support what you guys are doing? Also supporting, I guess, other schools around the world.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you want to visit us, that's a good thing. I mean, we have a Just Giving page when you come to visit us, and any of your listeners is welcome to come. They just need to sign up on the website. They'll have lunch with the kids and a tour of the school, and they'll be able to see what we do here. And that's why we get all these visitors, because people do come from. We get loads of visitors actually from the Netherlands, tons, who come and see what we do. So, do send more of your countrymen our way.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here today and having this conversation.
Thank you, Daniel. Nice to have met you, and nice to have been on the podcast. Thanks for having me.
Thank you as well. And also, of course, thank you for our listeners. If you have any questions, please let us know. And if you want to support us, of course, go to nieuwrechts.nl or to social media. And I'll see you in the next one.
All right, fantastic.